All right, nice to see some familiar faces. Welcome to our Zoom Tech Old Timers meeting. Peter Thomas, I'm the Alumni Director at WPI. The event is being recorded and photos may be taken during the event as well, just to let everyone know. We're hoping that the recording will be posted later so others can view it who are not able to attend today. All guests will be muted during the program presentation. For your best viewing opportunity, you may wish to toggle the screen to speaker view. You can do this at the top right corner of your monitor, where you have the ability to change from gallery view to speaker view. After a brief Tech Old Timers business meeting, our featured program will begin at 2 o'clock. Thank you to those who submitted questions for Dan before the meeting. We will get to as many as we possibly can. You can also submit questions through the chat feature at the bottom of your monitor. The chat will be monitored by WPI staff, who will be compiling questions, and then we will ask them of Dan at the end of the session, time allowing. Following our featured presentation, we invite you to join us in breakout rooms for optional interactive social gatherings. And now, my pleasure to turn the program over to our president, Neil Norum.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to welcome everyone to our first meeting of the academic year. Tech Old Timers has been around for 62 years on campus, older than many of you out there, I'm sure. It's open to all retired, nearly retired members of the WPI community. That's alumni, staff, and faculty, and their guests. We've been around a long time, but what do we get together for? Social engagement, a variety of entertaining and educational programs throughout the academic year. And now if you'd don't have to stand up, but I'd like you to at least join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call now on our alumna, Paula Delaney, class of 75, who will present the Secretary's report.
Thank you, Neil. Our last meeting of Tech Old Timers was March 4th, 2020. The meeting was called to order by Al Levesque, class of 59, and following the Pledge of Allegiance, the Secretary's and Treasurer's reports were read. Membership that day for attendees included class of 75 through the class of 50, which was very nice. Maureen Maynard from the Alumni Office of Lifetime Engagement provided updates on recent campus and alumni events. Our presenter that day was Professor Gregory Fisher. He's a faculty member in ME and robotics at WPI. He is the founding director of the Automation and Interventional Medicine Robotics Research Lab, and also director of the Mass Tech supported Practice Point R&D Center at WPI's Gateway Park. He spoke to us about the Practice Point Center. He explained that researchers at the center are working on advances in surgical robotics with innovative robots designed to work inside MRI scanners, assistive robots to aid in stroke rehabilitation, and robotic nursing systems. He also gave us a fascinating look at ongoing undergraduate and graduate student research at the Healthcare and Robotics Center, including on rehabilitative devices, advanced prosthetics, and socially assistive robots. At the conclusion of his presentation, attendees enjoyed lunch and some social time. These minutes are respectfully submitted. Paula Delaney, class of 75. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I move passing of the minutes.
Thank you, Paula.
You're welcome.
As Paula mentioned, part of our usual spring program schedule was curtailed due to the coronavirus restrictions. And so this Treasurer's report covers a period from the end of February 24th, to August 25th. And in that interval of time, there were no remittances of dues, and there were no expenditures. And therefore, our account balance remained as it started at $4,147.52. Let's not forget the 52 cents. A recap for the year. 49 members over the academic year. 49 members paid dues, and a few members chose to make some additional gifts, which we appreciate very much. Thank you to those folks. So our total revenues were $840, and our expenditures, which consisted of speaker fees over the program, were amounted to $507.50, leaving our account balance at $4,147.52. Are there any questions? Being none, may I have a motion to accept?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All agree? Okay. Thank you very much. And now I will turn the program back to Peter. I'd like to call on Peter Thomas, who is the Executive Director of the Office of Lifetime Engagement at WPI, and he will provide the Alumni Relations Report. Peter?
Thank you so much, Al. Thrilled to be here today. Thrilled that we're getting Red Sox in Worcester. I think it's awesome. And it's great to see so many of the WPI community. One thing that we've learned by going entirely virtual over the last 2 terms is that we have the ability of engaging so many folks that don't necessarily live in the greater Worcester area. So I welcome all of you who live further away, and glad that you could join us today. We have been busy. Over the summer, we worked with the Alumni Association and put together welcome events for freshmen that are coming into WPI. These were hosted by alumni, and we had a 50% increase. Almost 500 incoming freshmen attended these events. They had an opportunity to hear from existing students and alumni about the WPI experience. And in case you missed it, we were named the 12th best alumni network in the country this past year by Princeton Review. And that's really because of all of you and what you do to support our students. We also had a Gold and Women of WPI event, which was a scavenger hunt at the Smithsonian, again, virtual, well attended and well enjoyed. So if you had a chance to go, I hope you had a good time. The big thing that's coming up for us is Homecoming, which is going to be a series of several events. There's going to be a 5K road race, which you can walk, run, kayak, whatever you would like to do, and join us in that race. And that would be terrific to have you on board. We have an anniversary of the pep band, and we also have an environmental engineering professor who on the 21st, which is Zero Carbon Day, will be giving a presentation, Zero Emissions Day, will be giving a presentation on carbon footprint and minimizing it. And that's Carrick Eggleston, who's the professor and department head for environmental engineering. So again, a lot of events coming up that week. We'll also have a tribute to Janet Richardson on Thursday night. If you know Janet and would like to support her, she wins the Goat's Head Award. I think that would be terrific. But all of these events are online, and all of them, of course, will be virtual. So with that, please keep in mind that we'll be sending out newsletters with all of the stuff that's coming up, and I hope you'll join us. But let me bring back Neil Norum to formally introduce our program.
Neil, you're muted.
Mute. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
You can hear me now. Okay. I'm pleased to introduce a colleague of mine while at WPI, someone who contributes to make fabulous ideas come to reality for the WPI and Worcester communities as they come together. Assistant Vice President for Government and Community Relations, Linda Luft.
Thank you, Neil, for that kind introduction. And hello, everyone. So today it's my great pleasure to introduce Dan Ray of the Worcester Red Sox. Dan and I first met a little more than 2.5 years ago when the Worcester city manager asked President Leshin to host a meeting with Dan and Larry Lucchino of the Pawtucket Red Sox. The meeting was very much under the radar, as the Red Sox were just beginning to look at Worcester as a location for a new ballpark, and people weren't talking about it publicly. Little did we know that meeting would lead to dozens and dozens of meetings with WPI faculty and administrators, and probably hundreds of hours, all of which eventually led to an announcement that we are all very, very proud of. And that is that WPI in April of 2019 was named by the Worcester Red Sox as their academic technology partner. We would not be here today having this conversation, nor would we have become that partner without Dan Ray. Dan, who literally put hundreds and hundreds of hours into conversations with our faculty as we tried to figure out how could we work together. So today, Dan is serving as the Executive Vice President of Real Estate Development and Business Affairs for the Pawtucket Red Sox. He was promoted to that position in February of 2019, note the date just before our announcement, after holding the title of PawSox General Manager since 2015. He oversees all business functions of the organization while also serving as the front office's point person on real estate and other investment opportunities around the team's new ballpark, Polar Park, which we all know now is about to open next April. And you all should know that he was a key negotiating member of the team that crafted the agreement with the city and state officials to build this ballpark in Worcester's Canal District. And with that, please help me welcome Dan Ray.
Well, thank you, Linda, for that kind introduction. And your recollection of our first meeting is a good one. I think there have been nuclear arms treaties that have been negotiated with less secrecy and less clandestine approaches than our meeting with the city of Worcester, which was great. We love Mayor Petty and City Manager in Augustus and the whole group there. But we were very tactful at the time about how to go about this negotiation and this whole process. And I remember walking in with Linda and President Leshin, and Larry and I were being pretty inconspicuous, we thought. But Linda and President Leshin had this group of faculty and senior leadership there ready to meet us. And we sat down, not exactly sure what we were going to talk about, what we were going to get into. And President Leshin brought out folders for Larry and me with dozens of ideas from the WPI faculty, I think from some students, Linda, if I remember correctly. It was a really impressive first meeting to see this senior leadership group and this faculty group really come to us with, sort of open minds and eagerness to work with us. So WPI, as Linda says, has been right at the forefront of things with us since the very beginning of this process 2.5 years ago. And it's exciting now to see our ballpark, if you've driven by it any time recently, is really starting to look like a ballpark. When we first announced our deal with the city of Worcester, I remember looking at my calendar and saying, we have 32 months till opening day of April 2021. And for those of us who work in baseball, we measure things by days and by weeks. We don't really measure things in years so much. We think in terms of what's next in front of us. So I remember looking at my calendar and saying, my goodness, 32 months, that's an eternity. Well, we're now 24 months into it. So we have 8 months to go. And not to mix sports metaphors here, but we really are going into the fourth quarter of the game, or the 7th or 8th inning, I guess, if you wanted to analogize it to a baseball game. So that means we've, I think, accomplished a lot to date working with our partners at the city of Worcester and great partners like WPI, and still have a lot of work to do, a lot of work that's still left in front of us here these next 8 months to get to April of 2021. And I think, like everyone, we have faced certain challenges. Certainly the pandemic has thrown a wrench into plans, as I think it has for everyone, but we are as excited and as motivated and as eager as ever, and really excited to see what this ballpark looks like in April of next year. So today we're going to show you some behind the scenes images, what I refer to as some before and afters, and also some to be, 8 months from now what the ballpark's going to look like. So you're going to see, I think, some really cool images of what this place will look like and how it will serve the city of Worcester, the Central Mass region. We're really excited for what this ballpark can mean as we go forward here. So we're going to jump into a bit of a visual presentation. I think Maureen Maynard, who's been great to work with, she has it queued up in just a second here. But before I get to that, I do want to introduce one of my colleagues who's here with me on the call here. The gentleman is named Ryan Marr. Ryan is our manager of season ticket sales. And let's see if Ryan, can you wave to the folks or introduce yourself just quickly?
Yeah, like Dan mentioned, manager of season tickets with the Worcester Red Sox. Really happy to be a small part of this larger project. Happy about the move, and certainly happy that you all welcome me today. So thank you again.
So Ryan will take all the tough questions. I'll take the easy questions, and we'll throw some curveballs at both of us here. But great to have Ryan on here, and he can answer any questions about ticket sales, season tickets, interest that folks might have. We're really excited. And I think as we see this ballpark come, to fruition, people start to really understand what it's going to look like, how it's going to lay out. So if you have questions, I like to typically make these introductions very interactive. I don't like to speak at the audience for 20 or 30 minutes. I prefer you to jump up if you have any questions. If you have any thoughts, any observations, we are still making edits and making adjustments to our plans as we speak. So any good ideas, we'll take them, and would love to just jump in and show you guys where we are and where we're going with things here. So Maureen, I don't know if you have the controls ready, but if we can just pop those up, and we'll go through some slides here and show everyone where we are and things. All right, so I'll maybe just say next slide, please, Maureen. As I mentioned, April 2021 is our North Star, and we are confident that we're going to get there. Again, the pandemic has thrown certain challenges in our direction. We lost about 7 weeks to a shutdown at the construction site, and 7 weeks in a 2.5-year construction process is not a trivial loss. So we've really tried, since resuming in late May, early June, we've really tried to make up for that. And if you go by the site today, you'll see during the day, full construction, all parts of the site. And even in the late afternoon or the evening hours, you'll see crews there trying to make up for some lost time. So we feel good about where we are. And you'll see, I think, in the coming pages, how much progress we've made here. So next slide, please, Maureen. All right, so this just shows at I think a macro level kind of how well situated this ballpark is, and how we think it will have a catalytic presence in the neighborhood of the Canal District. So you see Polar Park and this Canal District site is really centrally located. We have the City Hall downtown area to our north. We have WPI, which probably should be on this page, I think a little further to the north. We have Union Station, just a small, probably 1/4 mile to 1/3 of a mile walk away from us in the sort of northeast direction of things. Kelly Square we have right near our ballpark, which has undergone a massive transformation led by our partners at the state of Massachusetts. And I will say that Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito have been tremendous partners, especially Lieutenant Governor Polito as a Shrewsbury native. She's led the charge from the state side of things, working in hand with city leadership. So we're excited to see what this new reconfigured Kelly Square will mean, so that we can get people through our ballpark site here. And you see the ballpark there. That street to the sort of home plate side of the ballpark is called Madison Street. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but there's a sort of a intersecting street that goes between the ballpark side of the site and the southern side of the site. That part of things that says future developments. That will be a mixed-use development project that will include hotels, apartments, biotech office space, retail, hospitality. That future development pad is about 12 acres. The ballpark site itself is about 6 acres. So we were able to find, working hand in hand with a development partner of ours, this 18-acre site in the downtown part of Worcester. You don't find many 18-acre development sites that are suitable for a ballpark, much less a 10,000 person AAA ballpark. So we were really excited when we found this opportunity and started talking with City Manager Augustus and his team to see this 18 acres of developable real estate really excited us, and also tied in nicely with a development story here with the city of Worcester, where I think we've seen great momentum these last maybe 5, 10, 20 years, where downtown now has more residential buildings, more hotels. Kelly Square and the Canal District has seen great life and energy in recent years, new restaurants, new bars, new activity there. So we've said all along that we were really not starting a wave of momentum, we were joining in a wave of momentum. We were taking part in an ongoing trajectory here that really excites us. And you see, I think from this image here, just how centrally located things are. So Maureen, if we can move to the next slide, that'd be great. All right, so this shows a little more of the detail of how this ballpark and this development site is going to look when it's all done. As I mentioned, Madison Street is the street that goes between the ballpark and the southern development site there, so you can really see how interconnected everything is. You see the residential buildings here. These are the I guess, acutely shaped buildings here on the southern site, those buildings on the southeastern part of the site. And then that L-shaped building right along Madison Street, that's going to be the hotel that we're going to have. There will be a biotech office space, as I mentioned, we hope to have within the next 3 or 4 years on the southern side as well, that sort of brick facade building there on the southern side. And just behind the biotech building, you can't see it from here, but there is going to be a garage built by our partners at the state of Massachusetts. That garage will have probably 400 to 500 parking spaces in it. And I just saw a question about parking, which is a great question. Everyone wants to ask about where can I park, where can I put my car. So we're going to have a garage on the southern site that has 400 to 500 parking spaces. We also did a count of the existing and soon to be brought online parking within a half-mile radius of the ballpark. And there are about 6,000 parking spaces within a half-mile radius of the ballpark. And typically for a 10,000 person ballpark, you use a ratio of about 4 seats for 1 parking space needed. So we would typically need about 2,500 parking spaces, and we think that we have more than double that in the Canal District and right over the train tracks here in the downtown part of things. So we think there's going to be plentiful, abundant parking. It's not going to be like if anyone has been to McCoy Stadium in Pawtucket, we have a giant parking lot that surrounds our parking lot with thousands of spaces. It's not going to be quite like that. It's probably going to be more akin to what you would experience when you go to a game at Fenway, where everyone tends to have their typical place they go and park. My father always parks at the Windsor School, just a short walk away where my sister went to high school. People park at Boston University or Copley Square or by the Harvard Club. They park all over the place, but there's abundant parking in different areas. I think we're going to be similar to that, and we'll be unveiling a parking plan here in the next few months to really explain where different lots are, where different options are, to make sure that parking is abundant and easy to find. So next slide, please, Maureen. So this shows, I think, a little bit more of where we are today. And this was, I think, taken about a month ago. So the ballpark on the right-hand side of the image has definitely come even further out of the ground, but you can already start to see where the ballpark is kind of coming out of the ground. On that left-hand side, that dirt lot right now, we're using that for construction crew parking and for our construction trailers. But you're also going to see, I think, in the next year or two, the vertical buildings on that part of the site also go up. So you'll see the residences, single unit apartment residential going up. You'll see the hotel going up. You'll see that parking garage, and that parking garage will have handicap parking as well. I just saw a question about the accessible parking side of things. So there'll be, I think, a real nice mix of uses here. And we designed this whole project in a way so that the ballpark and the mixed-use development that will be on that left-hand side, that will kind of come together and work in harmony. The best ballparks, the best project we've seen are ones where the development side of things and the ballpark are working in concert. And we've really worked together from the beginning of this whole process with City Manager Augustus, with our development partner, a gentleman by the name of Dennis Dowdle, who's done some projects in Worcester and has a good track record. We've really worked in harmony and collaboratively, and obviously had partners like WPI along the way helping us with things and helping us with planning. So you're going to see, I think, in the coming months, this really come out of the ground even more so and be an impressive project when all said and done. So we'll hop over to the next slide, please. And of course, you also see the parking peanut there in Kelly Square. That little peanut-shaped area will turn into a new sort of rotary that will get people through. And this one shows what you'll see when you get to the ballpark site here. You have, as I said, a 10,000 capacity ballpark. We're going to have about 6,000 to 6,500 fixed seats, and then about 3,500 to 4,000 flexible seats. So those might be bar stools, drink rails. Those might be group areas. If WPI and the Alumni Club wants to have a big celebration there, we'll obviously find a great place for you guys to have everyone be able to be there. So we're going to have a lot of group spaces, a lot of flexible social spaces, and then about 6,000 seats, as I mentioned, largely between the third base foul pole and the first base foul pole. So it's going to really be, I think, an intimate ballpark experience. We're building this on essentially 6 acres of land, and we really wanted to find a ballpark site that fit a vision that Larry Lucchino, our chairman, who built Camden Yards in Baltimore, Petco Park in San Diego, and rebuilt Fenway Park in Boston. Larry has always talked about the charm of intimate ballparks that really bring people in and have them a part of the action. As a baseball fan and as a sports fan, I think there's nothing more deflating than when you come into a ballpark or a stadium and you're sitting up in the nosebleeds. You feel like the players on the field look like ants. You can't feel like you're part of things. We wanted to go the opposite way and make sure that there really is no bad seat in the house, and that everyone here has an opportunity to feel very connected with the field of play. So you see how that field is going to lay out there. You see some unique contours that we'll get to in a second with the architecture of the field, but some really exciting stuff here as we look at the ballpark and how it's going to look. So next slide, please, Marie. And this is the today image, which again looks pretty similar to how it's going to look. Obviously, one of the big variables right now is the grass. We are rapidly moving construction equipment off the field, dirt mounds off the field. We're going to be putting in the grass here in the next few weeks, actually. And we're told that our grass needs to be planted and in and coming out of the ground before the weather gets too cold on us here. So that is a pretty fixed deadline that we have. We need to have a professional playing field for next spring. And to do that, you need to have a certain amount of lead time. So you'll see the start of really a green, verdant surface on the outside of the ballpark. You're also going to see greenery outside the ballpark. We really wanted to create sort of a public park effect to this ballpark. So you'll see that, and we'll show in a few slides some of those images and how that's going to look. But you really do see now the contours of the facility and how things are shaping up and how things are coming together. One other thing we really talked about was having a ballpark that looked a lot like Worcester. We didn't want to have a ballpark that looked like it came from another part of the country or another part of the world. We wanted one that really looked representative of the city that we're a part of now. So you'll see a lot of steel. You'll see architectural touches that are reminiscent of buildings like the Higgins Armory. We really wanted to have a ballpark that looked representative of this community. So you'll see that, and I think this image shows some of that steel and some of that Worcester grit and toughness really well here. So next slide, please. So this is where you will come in if you're coming in through the home plate gate of things. So this is going to be called the DCU Plaza. DCU has been one of our big corporate partners, and they're helping us to create both an entry plaza, and they're also going to be branding one of the clubs, the main club upstairs behind home plate. So you see the DCU Plaza here will really be a fun sort of pedestrian area. We're going to have these giant World Series rings out in the concourse of this DCU Plaza. And one thing our marketing people always tell us is that fans nowadays are always looking for great social media and picture taking opportunities. So when you go to a ballpark, you look for that Instagrammable moment that you can find. So we're going to put these giant World Series rings. You have, I think, the 2004, the 2007, the 2013 World Series rings there. You can't wear them, but you can sit behind them, stand behind them, take a picture with one of your favorite World Series rings, or you can put all 3 rings in the picture. So this will be a really cool area that I think people will be able to enjoy. It will also be open on non-game days and during non-game hours. So we envision people coming and using this just like a public park. We're going to have a grassy slope that I think is in the next picture where people can sit and read. And Maureen, if we go ahead to that one, I think that will show the grassy slope that we have here. Actually, this shows what it looks like today, but this will be turned into the grassy area and this grassy public park. So we'll go one ahead, please. And you'll see really how this will come together and really animate the Madison Street area that you see here on the left-hand side. Then you have this nice grassy hill. We envision people coming down with their dogs, with picnic baskets, sitting out there during the day. We think it'll be really busy and active, obviously, on game days, but even on non-game days. We'd like to see people coming and using this and really animating the ballpark district on non-game days and on game days as well. So next slide, please, Maureen. All right, this is you're now in the ballpark, you're now behind home plate, and these are some of the best seats right behind the plate in some of our best seats. You look out, you can see the contours of the ballpark here. You can see the straightaway center field view of everything. On the right-hand side, I think it's a little bit obscured right now by the visual boxes of us talking, but in a second, we'll show you an even better image. But we're gonna have our version of the green monster, our blue monster, which is actually to be in right field. And people will be curious to know why we made that decision, why instead of having a monster in left field like the Red Sox, why we decided to have our monster in right field. So we'll get to that in just a minute, but you really see the unique contours of the outfield. You see a nice grassy berm out in the left field and left center field part of the park. So it'll really be, I think, a nice visual image when you walk in and you see, again, a combination of fixed seats, traditional seats, but also then those group areas, those social areas that people can come to. The grass berm in particular is a huge hit in minor league baseball. When we have sellout games down in Pawtucket at McCoy Stadium, the first place to get filled up is the grass berm. So we think the grass berm here in our outfield is going to be really popular, and there are going to be a lot of really nice social places for people to come in and enjoy themselves. So next slide, please. And this is what it looks like today. Again, I think it'll look a lot different when you have grass down, and when there's greenery, you'll really start to see things come into effect. We'll then put paint up there at some point before opening day, but you really see here the contours too of the ballpark coming into effect. You'll have seats that will be installed, but you can now already see the rows of seats. You can see again how intimate it is. You know, it doesn't look like this cavernous, massive ballpark where you're playing in a canyon. You're really close to the action, and you're really a part of things there. So Maureen will move to the next slide, and we'll show a few more images just of this sort of seating bowl area. And this one shows well too that intimacy that I talked about, how close the seats are to the field. There really is not a bad seat in this entire seating bowl. I like to say to people that this ballpark will ideally have the intimacy and the charm that Fenway Park has, but then also have more modern, slightly more cushy seats. You're not going to have those little tiny seats that you need to be, you know, a ballerina to fit in, or you won't be sitting behind a pole as you sometimes get to sit behind at Fenway Park. We all love Fenway Park. I worked there with the Red Sox for 10 years, but there are some modern creature comforts and amenities you'd like to have in a ballpark, and we think this one will have it. So next slide, please. And this shows where we are today. You see the dugout in sort of the middle part of the picture. The dugout is going to be right there in the middle of things. This will be actually the visitor side dugout. So the visitors will have no shortage of fan feedback. If you want to politely, you know, give them your opinion or some of your ideas, you can do that. We really wanted to, again, have things be intimate, have things be very almost congested, but do so in a way that's, I think, really true to the ballpark experience. And you also see in the background there, the city skyline, which is visible too. We wanted to have an area that would have, you know, a lot of the city ambiance taken into effect. And you see the Telegram building out there in the far left field part of things. One of our founding corporate partners is a gentleman by the name of Chip Norton, who's a real estate developer in Worcester. And I keep telling Chip that he's going to have his version of the Citgo sign if he wants to put it up on his building there, on his Telegram building. So we're excited to see how that area looks and just how the skyline here really comes together as the ballpark comes into effect. So next slide, please. So you see here a few of our key areas of the ballpark. You see the Hanover deck up in left field. That's going to be one of our main group areas. So that's going to accommodate, I think, what, Ryan, 300, 400 people at a time, if it can?
So 200 on the Hanover deck, but the left field building underneath it can be reserved with the Hanover deck to create that 400 person space, right?
So if WPI has the 200 to 400 person group, you might want to sit up on the Hanover deck. And what's cool about that is you look on the sort of backside of things and you're looking right at the city, you're looking at the skyline, but then you have a great view looking down onto the field, sort of similar to the Coca-Cola deck at Fenway Park. So a really unique vantage point up on the Hanover deck. You see our video board that's gone in. We recently just put up the brackets for the video board. So you see that now, and we're going to install the video board. What will really be, I think, a state-of-the-art video board. You know, one of my pet peeves and Larry's pet peeves is going to a ballpark and looking around and trying to find any sort of video board that you can even see. You know, you go to some beautiful new ballparks, and they put in a video board, and it was like almost last on the list of priorities. So we want to have a really visually stimulating, informative video board that can display text information, can display visual information, and really have a lot of info there without being overwhelming either on people, because sometimes you go to a ballpark and it feels like you're getting just 3 hours of noise and light and just a lot of, unga pachka, to use a word that Larry uses, I think an old Yiddish expression. We don't want that. We want visual clarity and audio clarity, and I think this video board will help deliver that for us. So next slide, please. So this is a slightly different angle. Now we're looking at the right field side of things. And just to briefly explain the Monsters evolution in Worcester. So when we first started the project, when we first started talking with Linda and President Leschen and other folks, everyone thought that we were going to have a green monster out in left field, similar to the Boston Red Sox. And we thought about that too. We liked that idea. And we liked the idea of having some sort of monster or some sort of, significant wall at the ballpark. So we talked with our architects, we talked with civil engineers, we thought a lot about this, and we realized that the ballpark site, when we first got it, was actually sort of a hill. So we had it built into basically the side of a hill, and it was a hill that had a 50-foot drop. We ended up moving off a ton of dirt, a ton of earthwork from this site onto the southern site and onto other sites in the city. But we basically have a giant wall of dirt out in that right field, center field part of the plot. So we decided, if we're going to have a visual, wall of 20, 30 feet, and if we have all this dirt that we need to use and possibly put in some sort of retaining wall, let's allow the green monster, or in our case, the blue monster, in right field to serve as something of a retaining wall for all that dirt, while also creating a really cool effect, so that when people are walking in through center field or through right field and they're coming into the ballpark, they're actually going to be walking into the ballpark, but doing so from atop the monster. So you'll see in a second just how that ties itself together. But basically, those areas in right field and center field are about 30 to 40 feet above the field, versus the seats in the areas of the ballpark on the home plate side, which are coming off of Madison Street and are at their own level. So we have this sort of tilted site, and we've created almost a bowl effect where the ballpark is built into the bowl. We've taken advantage, I think, of the geometry of the site, the unique conditions, the unique approaches, and really created something that's cool and something that's different. So we can say that our green monster or our blue monster is in right field, and we think it really accomplishes a number of different things that work well for the site and work well for its geometry. So next slide, please. So this shows another, again, image of where we are today. You can see what will eventually become the home dugout on the first base side. We're going to have our clubhouse for players, our weight rooms and training rooms, all the areas that players need to get ready before the games. Those will be built in right behind the dugout area. So sort of between the DCU Plaza and the dugout that you see there, there's going to be ample weight room and areas that really benefit the Boston Red Sox, because at the end of the day, our biggest priority is to take care of the Boston Red Sox and help the Boston Red Sox win world championships. So there'll be some really cool state-of-the-art stuff behind there, and we hope to be able to let fans see some of that stuff, bring people in maybe on tours during the off season, and let them really see some of the amenities that are there for our players to make their experiences with us as positive as possible. Next slide, please. So this looks out, again, a similar view, but now just from a little bit elevated. This is from the DCU Club. So this DCU Club behind home plate is going to be, I think, one of the real signature areas of the ballpark. We're selling individual seats in that area of the ballpark. So if anyone is looking for a great club experience, similar to the EMC Club or the State Street Pavilion at Fenway Park, this is going to be, I think, very similar to that. Looks right out in the field. You see the full vantage point and those, again, unique contours and those unique aspects of the ballpark here. So next slide, please, Maureen. Similarly, this is where we are today. One of the cool features right now is that you can see the twin spires of Union Station, the train station there, out in the left center field direction. We are eventually going to have an office building, a traditional office building in left field, and there's going to be a 6-story building in left field. So eventually those twin spires will actually be obscured by the presence of this left field building. But for the time being, while we wait for the office market and real estate to bounce back a bit, we're going to have sort of an open look here, and that open look will extend out towards Green Street and beyond, out towards Union Station. So a really unique viewpoint. Next slide, please, Maureen. So this is now atop, just to situate you, you're in the right field corridor of the ballpark atop the Blue Monster. So this is what's known as Summit Street. This is actually an active street. We're creating something of a thoroughfare here that will be on game days almost similar to what used to be known as Yawkey Way at Fenway Park and is now Jersey Street. If you've been to a game at Fenway Park, as I'm sure many of you have, we put up turnstiles in the center field and left field parts of that, and we block off the street. So during game days, it becomes actually a part of the ballpark. But on non-game days, we're actually going to take the turnstiles down and have it just be a city street. So we're really going to try to animate this with potentially musicians, with street performers, with maybe some portable concession stands, and really have this be an active part of the ballpark. And I think the next couple of slides, if we skip ahead, Maureen, I think show even better how this right field corridor will work. You'll see here, now you're again on top of the Blue Monster. You're looking down onto the field. We're going to try to actually keep this part of the ballpark open on non-game days too, so people can walk up. Gold Street is one of the connective streets that connects from the ballpark site down to Green Street, the main corridor of the Canal District. So we're going to have what we call the Gold Street Overlook, and we're going to allow people on even non-game days to come in, take a picture, take an Instagram photo, put it up on their social media, and really make this a fun part of it. So next slide, please, Maureen. But you see here really how cool it is and how you look out there. And this shows you where it is today. Picture green out there, you know, plantings taking place in the next few months. That big mound of dirt is going to be moved off, and I'm sure we'll find some other use of all that dirt. But this will be, in the not so distant future, a green field that you're looking down on, and you can see how that's come into effect right now. So next slide, please. This too shows, again, from sort of the opposite angle, how that monster is going to be situated. You see the distance down the right field line of 320 feet. So that's a distance actually that the Boston Red Sox worked with us to deduce. They wanted to have a lot of input on the dimensions of the ballpark, making sure that it played pretty fairly. For the many baseball fans on here, you'll know that certain ballparks play as, you know, huge pitchers parks. So they're very tough and punishing on hitters. Other ballparks go the other way. We wanted a ballpark that is sort of a neutral ballpark in terms of its park effects. And you'll see here, the Blue Monster, I think, will have an effect where it maybe encourages a few cheap home runs every now and then, but also cuts down on some doubles and triples that maybe get turned into singles. So we think it'll sort of net out. And you see that 320 line. It's about 20 feet tall, so a little bit shorter than the Green Monster at Fenway. Fenway's Green Monster is, I believe, 35 or 36 feet. So we're going to be in the 20 to 22 range. So still a pretty imposing wall and a good inviting target for hitters when they take swings at the wall. So next slide, please. So this is a slightly different angle now, shows the sort of center field vantage point of the wall. As you can see, even when I say it's only 20 to 22 feet, that's still a tall wall. You're going to have to poke it to get it out of there. And atop the wall, you see this schoolhouse, this old schoolhouse, which is now owned by a gentleman by the name of Alan Fletcher, who many of you might know. Alan is a longtime developer and business person in the Canal District. He's done great work building a new public marketplace and apartment unit in the downtown part of the Canal District. So Alan actually owns and lives in this house, and we tell Alan that he's going to have probably the best Airbnb or the best bed and breakfast in all of baseball if he wants it, sitting right atop the Green Monster there. So next slide, please. All right, and as I said before, this really shows the Green Monsters, the scoreboard above the wall, I should say, how well that comes across. We're going to have a lot of visual image on there, but also not try to, I think, overwhelm people and have too much visual imagery. So you see there, this will be, again, as I said, a real state-of-the-art sort of video board, and then Polar Park will have their iconic imagery there atop the video board. Polar Beverages has been a great corporate partner of ours. Ralph Crowley and Chris Crowley and the Crowley family have been just great partners to work with, great supporters of the city of Worcester, and great supporters of this project. So we're looking forward to having them atop there. Next slide, please. So another cool, I don't think I've talked about this quite yet because there are a lot of cool features to this ballpark, but this shows the train tracks that are going right by our ballpark. And these train tracks are going to hug the ballpark on sort of the left field side of things. So you can see when you're standing, I think this was taken actually from the Hanover deck, where we might have a WPI event at some point. This train tracks is going to go right behind the ballpark, right behind our scoreboard. So it really has sort of an effect that I think situates you in Worcester, unless you know you're part of Worcester, you're part of Worcester's industrial history. So pretty cool there when you're behind the Green Monster. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, berms are a big part of our ballpark. People love to put blankets out there, love to sit out there with their family. Maureen, if we go to the next slide, I think we'll see another perspective from the berm. But left field here, oh, actually, we've done the slides a little out of order here. But this shows, again, sort of that vantage point now from the sort of the corner of the ballpark, from the train tracks corner. I think the next slide might have the correct one I was looking for there. Yep, that's the one. So this one has the sort of berm view from center field. And as you see, we have a really extensive berm. It's a few hundred feet long because we want to be able to fit, hundreds of families up there on a given night. So you see the left field berm, the center field berm, and I think the next slide might actually have a picture of the berm as it stands today as you look in to the ballpark. Yep. So that's the perspective today. Obviously, it will be animated with the grass, with the facade of the ballpark, but you really see that sort of expansive panoramic vision that the berm viewpoint has on things. So next slide, please. This is the overview of how it's going to look. As I showed you earlier, we had the bird's eye view from, I think, sort of the other angle of things, from more of the southern side. But this looks down from the northern side and shows, again, just how interconnected everything is, how these 18 acres work in concert. There, as I mentioned, on the left-hand side of the image, those are going to be our market rate residential units. So those are going to be about 300 to 400 apartment units there available to people with first floor retail and restaurant space. That white building, as I mentioned, is going to be the hotel. And then right behind that will be the parking and the biotech building. So this really shows how everything kind of comes together, is pulled together, and the exciting sort of 18-acre vision here that we have for this ballpark site. And I think that might be the last image, but let's just flip one more, make sure we don't have anything left in the deck here. Of course, we had to show the today image. We can't just show the after, we got to show the now. And the now shows you just how this ballpark site, again, is really coming together. We've created, I think, a plot that has a lot of connectivity, different neighborhoods. You see the Green Island neighborhood of the ballpark site there to the immediate south of things. You see some of the old mill buildings. So we really love how this ballpark is situated in a true downtown area and a true busy place. So next slide, please. Looks like the same slide. I think that might be one of the, if not the final one of the final ones. So Maureen, is that the final one or do we have one more to go?
That was a final.
That's the final. All right, that wraps it up. So I've done a lot of talking. I see a good number of questions in the question box here. And I think I saw one question about season tickets and things. So Ryan, do you want to answer the season ticket question for a couple of folks who asked that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question, David. So we actually went on sale a little over a year ago with season ticket packages at Polar Park. We, started really strong, and then COVID set in. We had a little bit of a delay. We kind of backed off our efforts. And then we had a Zoom construction update with Jan Marie at the beginning of July, which had about 200 people join on that. Based on the fact that that was so popular, we decided that we should resume our sales efforts. And we're happy to say that we're about 85% sold out of our total season ticket inventory. Now we have 6 different seating categories. Dan kind of alluded to them kind of on his presentation, but we have our DCU Club and dugout seats. Those are kind of our higher end season ticket options. You're gonna have that glassed in view behind you. It's going to be climate controlled, higher end food options. It's going to be a really nice big community space. We're going to be able to network and meet a lot of the people that are going to be in that club with you 70 times a year, which is going to be a very nice view. The dugout seats for the same price point of $22.40 for the full season are actually field level. So they stretch from dugout to dugout and they go within 4 rows of the field. So we touched on it a lot throughout the entire presentation, but the intimacy of the ballpark is something that we really wanted to keep in mind during the entire design process. So you really are on top of the action. You're going to be able to hear the umpires' calls. You're going to hear what the people are saying to the coaches and players. So that's kind of a cool view as well. The home plate field box is going to start in row 5, directly behind those dugout seats that I mentioned. And they're going to stretch back to the concourse. There's about 20 rows of seats there. And on that main concourse too, right behind home plate, is going to be a 360-degree bar, which will be open to everyone, but obviously you'll have a great access to it. Bree, I saw that reaction there. Yeah, I like that. So the bar will be open to everyone, but obviously you'll have great access to that from the home plate field box seats. And then going down the first base line, the first base field box seats are going to be directly behind the Woo Sox dugout. Depending on where you sit, you might be a little closer to home plate, or you might be a little closer to the home team bullpen that is actually attached to the dugout. So a little bit of home field advantage there for our guys. And then down the other side is third base field box. The difference there is you're looking into the Woo Sox dugout rather than being directly behind it. And you get to interact a little more with the visiting team. And I'm sure all of our fans will be nice, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue there. And for those price points, those are only $9.95 for the full 70-game season. And that side, actually, on the third base side, is a bit more shaded. We conducted a sun study about a year ago from a colleague of ours, Ben Weingarten, who was able to predict where the sun would be setting every day throughout 2021 and beyond. So we kind of oriented the entire park to make sure that the sun would be setting over your head and at your back down the third base line, no matter when we play. And finally, down the third base line, a little more removed from the visitor dugout, but with a great view into the visitor bullpen, is our third base reserve seats. They're our most affordable price point, very similar to what we have at McCoy Stadium. And for $770, you still, get a ticket to the game and you're in that seating bowl. And as Dan mentioned, there's really no bad seat in the house. We were able to take tours last week. And again, the intimacy, it really gives you a great feel for the game, and you'll be right on top of the action no matter where you are.
Yeah, and I think Ryan hit on, just how many neighborhoods we have in the ballpark. Larry likes to talk about neighborhoods having a lot of distinctive areas. So you come one game and you're on the Hanover deck with the WPI alumni event, and then you're in another game sitting up in the DCU club, or you walk up on a game day and, you buy a third base reserve ticket that we have available for $11 right behind the visitors dugout. I think there are a lot of distinctive neighborhoods, and people will come to appreciate that as they see things. So definitely look out for those. I saw a couple of questions just to, I guess, go through a few of the other questions we had here. One question about capacity, whether we, I think, can move in both directions. Both, can we expand if the ballpark's really popular? But what do we do in the event that next season, by April, we're still not in a place where we can host 100% capacity crowd? So I would say we're flexible and malleable as we need to be. I think ideally we would not expand much beyond the 10,000. I think that's really kind of a perfect point for us. And we've done a lot of studies to look at other ballparks. There's some AAA ballparks that are 15,000 seats, 16,000, 17,000 seats. That to us gets a little bit cavernous. And also on this 6-acre site, we think that 10,000 capacity is sort of an ideal number so that people can come in. We've also programmed, the number of restrooms that we have, the number of concession stands, the number of fan amenities, really based on that 10,000 number. So we could always move in that direction if we wanted to. But we also sort of believe, I think, philosophically in building the church, not just for Christmas or Easter, but for building it, for all days of the week and all Sundays in the year. So I think we really like where that 10,000 person capacity is on the higher end. And on the sort of lesser end, we're going to obviously see where things go these next several months with the pandemic. We are planning, if we need to be flexible and nimble. And you see teams right now, you see, football teams that are going through this as we speak. You see other sports that are looking at these questions. We certainly hope we're in a position by next April to have 10,000 people in our ballpark, but to do so in the most safe, most conscientious way possible. And if we need to deviate and if we need to adjust temporarily downwards, we can do that too. We're certainly hoping, like everyone, that we're back to a place of normalcy by next April. So appreciate the questions on capacity, both in the upward direction and in the downward direction. I saw a few good questions about different modes of transportation, not just cars, because I know we talked about parking, but people who might take the train, people who might take bikes, people who might use the airport. So I think across all of those different ways of looking at it, we want to really have an accessible sort of multimodal ballpark here. So you're going to have, I think, really nice train connectivity. As I mentioned, having Union Station so close to the ballpark is a really big advantage. And we hope that we have people who live in Wellesley or live in Natick or live in Newton who can jump on the train, get out to a Woo Sox game, jump back on the train at 9 o'clock, and be back at home by 9:30 or 10 o'clock. So that's a really big point of emphasis for us. And we've talked extensively with Lieutenant Governor and the governor's team about how we can ensure some regularity of train service. I know the Lieutenant Governor has had that on her list of priorities probably even before we came to the forefront here. So definitely train accessibility and making it so that trains are plentiful and available is a big deal for us. I love the bike idea. We've talked a little bit about having bike areas at the ballpark where people can store bikes, people can come up, ride a bike, put it in a secure place, go watch the game, then grab their bike at the end of the game. So bikes will certainly be part of our thinking and part of our planning process. And the airport question is a great question as well, because we're definitely hoping to see the airport, pick up momentum. We've talked at length with some of their folks, and they've been very helpful and very solicitous. So we're certainly talking about making the airport an even busier hub of activity. And it would certainly help our players and some of the opposing teams if they could come in through Worcester Airport versus having to go in through Logan or through TF Green. So we're definitely fans of the idea of having a busy, active airport.
And we had a few questions that were submitted beforehand as well.
Yep.
So one of them was, are there webcams so that people outside of Worcester can see the progress of the park?
There are. There's a webcam that we have on our social media feeds, and we can circulate this. I believe it's still up on our Facebook, but it shows progress of the ballpark. I believe it shows sort of a snapshot every 10 minutes. So it shows you, if something big happens in those 10 minutes, you'll see the change as it goes along, but you can sort of monitor it. My father, who's big on visual imagery, he checks it most days, he says. So we do have that. We want people to be able to follow along in real time here as we build this ballpark.
So we think that the city of Worcester and all of us who drive through it have the Red Sox to thank for the fixing of Kelly Square. Have you heard that before?
We have heard that. We've heard that a few times. And that was one of, again, the state's really big contributions to this project. When we sat down with Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, Jay Ash, the then Secretary of Economic Development, this was maybe 2.5 years ago, around the time Linda talked about our first meeting. We spoke with them, and they were pretty clear with us that the state of Massachusetts is not in the business of building ballparks per se. They instead wanted to frame things more as sort of an economic development project, which we think this is now. So they said we would support you guys in whatever endeavors, as long as they have sort of an economic development aimed to them. And if it includes improving the infrastructure of the site, if it includes the parking, if it includes ancillary areas, we'll help you with that. But your deal to build the ballpark, since it's going to be a city-owned ballpark, needs to be done just with the city of Worcester. And so we were able, given those goalposts, to then sit down with Manager Augustus and his team and hash out a deal for the ballpark. And then around that deal for the ballpark, between the team and the city, we were then able to bring in certain other parts of the project, like the Kelly Square renovation, like that southern parking garage I mentioned, like some other infrastructural improvements. So the state has really, I think, gone to great lengths to help support our project, but to do so in a sort of economic development aim. And getting people in and out through Kelly Square more efficiently, I think, is certainly a big part of that for us here.
We have a Pawtucket resident who's asked, very sad not to partake in the final season of Paw Sox at McCoy Field. Will there be any send-off games at McCoy before they start in Worcester?
Yeah, so we're talking to the mayor of Pawtucket, who's been a great advocate of ours during this whole process. And frankly, we wouldn't be in Worcester today if the mayor of Pawtucket, if his enthusiasm and his partnership was shared by all of the officials in Rhode Island. We did not get the partnership from state leadership that the mayor of Pawtucket gave us. The mayor of Pawtucket was a great ally, a great advocate, was always willing to sit down, and other people in that whole forum were not willing to go to the same length. So we love the mayor of Pawtucket, and we've been talking to him about different things we can do to really send off this final season. We've been running a restaurant at McCoy Stadium the last few months, an on-field restaurant on Fridays and Saturday nights. So we've been doing that in Pawtucket, and we're going to try to continue doing that for a while. We're going to look at other ways to send off McCoy in grand style, because quite frankly, that's been a venerable ballpark, and we want to send it out and also help the city of Pawtucket find its next use, find another team, maybe find another sport. We definitely want to see Pawtucket, find a new use for the ballpark that suits the city. So we're continuing to talk with the mayor of Pawtucket, who's been a great guy, a great advocate, and we're certainly doing what we can to help support him in his efforts there.
Can you describe the relationship between the Red Sox in Boston and the Red Sox in Worcester as it relates to IT and technology?
Sure. Yeah. So at a global level, the Boston Red Sox are actually one of 12 ownership partners in the team. So they have 8% stake in the Pawtucket Red Sox franchise, and so they're part of our ownership group. We have, from a baseball perspective, what's called a player development contract, a PDC between the Boston Red Sox and the Pawtucket Red Sox that links us together. And we share a lot of synergies with the Boston Red Sox. Several of us came from the Boston Red Sox. I was there with the Red Sox for 10 years. Most recently, I had been Larry Lucchino's chief of staff at the Red Sox when he was the president of the team. Larry came from the Red Sox, obviously. Dr. Charles Steinberg, our president, came from the Red Sox. We probably have 8 or 9 people actually with Red Sox backgrounds who are with the Paw Sox/Woo Sox now. And we've really continued, I think, a lot of the dialogue with the Boston Red Sox, strategizing with them. Our chief technology officer actually is a former Boston Red Sox employee who worked in the technology department of the Red Sox. So we strategize on a lot of different fronts. And I guess I'd put it in really 2 lenses. One lens, I would say, is the baseball-specific lens of things. So we work very closely with the Red Sox, making sure that they have all types of technology all around the ballpark that can help them and help our fans to better understand the game. We've seen in recent years the proliferation of technology in baseball and how you now have, what are called TrackMan cameras that track how quickly the bat strikes the ball and the exit velocity of the ball coming off the bat. Stuff that goes beyond my level of understanding. I was not a WPI candidate in any way because of my math skills, but for smarter people than me, they can track things like exit velocity and how that pertains to home run distances. So we work really closely with the Red Sox on all the baseball technology of things and make sure that they have what they need to properly assess and analyze everything coming out of a place like Pawtucket or Worcester. And then there's the business operations side. And on the business operations side, there too, we strategize constantly with the Red Sox, making sure that something like Wi-Fi is going to be really strong in the new ballpark, making sure that our point of sale systems for our concession stands, we actually have the same point of sale system, a group called Appetize that we're going to be using in Worcester. That's also the point of sale system that the Red Sox use at Fenway Park. And, when you come to a ballpark nowadays, you really see the full range of options that are available because of technology. And one thing that WPI has been working on with us very closely is the development of an app that we hope to have rolled out next spring. And that app will be available to all our fans so that when you come to the ballpark, you can use the app for a variety of different purposes. You can track your parking options, you can track your concessions options, you can track different entryways and exits, and really have an immersive experience just on the phone. And so we've worked very closely with WPI, with this team of students and professors who have helped us to start down the road of developing that app, doing some really important research on the app, and seeing really what fans are looking for in apps nowadays, because tastes are obviously changing. The pandemic has probably changed tastes even more, so that maybe now people really want, in-seat delivery. They don't want to go and sit in concession stand lines. They want to be able to have just a seamless experience from the time they purchase a ticket to the time they park and drive, to the time they come into the ballpark, to the time they leave the ballpark. So we've really worked closely, again, starting with those first conversations with President Leshin and Linda and the team. We've really talked about different elements of the ballpark that the WPI team can help us with. And that's, I think, a prime example of a really important area of synergy.
Thanks, Dan. A little bit of a different turn here. Question regarding philanthropy. Red Sox have a foundation generous to the community. What are the plans to enhance community interaction with the Woo Sox?
Yeah, so over the winter, this was, I guess, right before the pandemic, we actually announced the creation of a Woo Sox Foundation. So that's a team charity, a 501c3 that will, I think, in many ways mirror the intentions that we had with our Paw Sox Foundation down in Pawtucket, and then our Red Sox Foundation in Boston when we were with the Red Sox. So that will be our philanthropic arm. We'll be focused on a few key areas. I think we're going to be rolling out some key cornerstones of the Woo Sox Foundation. When we were at the Boston Red Sox, the Red Sox Foundation was focused on things like the Jimmy Fund, on the home base program at MGH for wounded veterans. There were, I think, 5 cornerstone programs for the Red Sox Foundation in Boston. And I think we're going to have a similar focus of maybe 4 or 5 discrete areas that we really focus on as a philanthropic entity. And we always talk about, the role that a baseball team has in its community. We're a very visible presence, much like WPI and a university would be. A baseball team is looked to for, leadership on different issues, leadership on social issues, leadership on, all types of different fronts. So we're going to be very active that way. And that comes from certainly Larry and Dr. Charles, and they've always had, which is, as a baseball team, use your pedestal, use your position for good, and be active in affairs of the community.
Thank you. Another little different question. Gentleman has asked, he said he was in elementary school in Worcester in the 60s with several members of the Crowley family. Do the Crowleys and Polar have a relationship with the Woo Sox beyond the naming rights?
They do, yeah. So the Crowleys, in addition to being naming rights partners in the ballpark and having that great sign that you saw in left field, they are also members of our ownership group. So they're one of the 12 partners with the team. And again, I can't emphasize enough how supportive they've been, how collaborative they've been. Obviously Polar's brand has taken off in exciting directions. It's a international brand now, known by people across the globe. And yet I think their roots in Worcester and their dedication and their commitment to Worcester is just so strong. And you see them at, seemingly every event. You see them at every charity dinner. You see them at every, sort of public facing thing. But I've seen up close just how dedicated they are and how they really, put their muscle, put their intentions behind just the words they have. So having Ralph and Chris and the family there as part of our group, I think it's been a tremendous asset to us. And we're lucky to have the Crowleys in this group.
So I think we mentioned when we were chit-chatting before this started that Janet Marie Smith had been a friend of WPI already. The question is, what is her role with the architects, and can you tell us more about it?
Sure. So Janet Marie Smith, for those of you who don't know, is Larry's sort of longtime architectural collaborator. Janet has been with the Boston Red Sox, before that with the Baltimore Orioles. She's now with the Los Angeles Dodgers as their vice president of ballpark planning and development. So she is really sort of a visionary, I would call her. I think she and Larry are two of the visionaries of this project who, along with city manager Augustus, have really kind of set a course for us and how we create this ballpark. And she has now taken, her Hall of Fame resume, quite frankly, between Camden Yards, Fenway Park, Dodger Stadium, some of the most iconic venues in baseball, or really all of sports. She's taken that now and applied it to Worcester. So we've been incredibly lucky to have her as a key leader on this project, working closely with Larry. She's an urban planner by design and by background. So she has been able to really help us to understand the urban context of the ballpark and making sure that we're not just building a great ballpark, but we're having a ballpark that extends into the community, that really synergizes with the local community. So she's been a huge part of things, and she's worked very closely with DAIQ, D'Agostino, Izzo, and Quirk. They are our architects on the project. And one of the principals in DAIQ, the Q of DAIQ, is a gentleman by the name of Tommy Quirk. And Tommy is actually a Worcester native. So Tommy has been the lead architect on the project. He's worked with Janet before on other projects. And so it was this really neat synergy where you have a local architect with a well-regarded Boston firm working hand in hand with Janet Marie Smith, working hand in hand with Larry, working hand in hand with city leadership. And when you have a collaboration like that, I think you see, good visual results like we're already seeing on this project.
Well, Dan, I thank you. You did a great job at handling the questions as they came up, and I think we've worked our way through all of the questions at this point. Any closing comments before we turn it back to Neil?
No, I just think, again, that the word partnership, I think, just comes in again and again and again. And it's certainly been a great partnership with again, all of you, with President Leshin, with Linda. We're really excited for what the next 8 months and beyond have in store. And if any questions that pop up here in the coming days or weeks or months, you have Ryan and my information. We'll send along all that. So any questions that pop up about, seats, about other questions, how we're working with the community, technology questions, we really appreciate the partnership and everything you guys have done to help get us to this point. So we're excited, and we have a lot of good stuff in store here. So thanks for having us today.
Thank you, Dan. Really exciting. And I also want to thank Ryan too. We appreciate you taking the time today. Linda, thank you for helping to organize this. We really appreciate your support. This program is being recorded and will be available. It'll take us a little time to edit it, but we will get it up so people can share it if they choose to. And we hope that you'll check the Tech Old Timers for up-to-date programming. On October 7th, we will welcome the founder of Turn Back Time Farm in Paxton, Mass, where many of our students do their IQPs and enjoy a GoPro tour of the working farm. And we'll hear from the construction of yurts on their property, which was a philanthropic gift from the class of 2020. And I think I just stole some of Neil's comments, so I apologize for that, Neil. But with that, I'm going to be quiet and pass it back to you.
Mute. Okay, I should be able to be heard. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Dan, for updating us on the Worcester Red Sox and Polar Park. And we're looking forward to the revitalization of the Canal District and how Kelly Square has changed from who's on first to a unique driving experience. And we're looking forward to the Wosox games coming up in the coming year. The Tech Old Timers executive staff, Maureen, Peter, Bob and Barbara Sutherland, Paula Delaney, and Al Levesque and myself have been meeting via Zoom for our future virtual meetings. It's a big change from meeting in Higgins' house to going online and seeing the little boxes on the screen, needless to say. And a matter of interest, you know, I remember Zoom back in the 50s and the 60s. I used to eat it. It's a breakfast wheat cereal, and it was created in the 30s. And I used to eat it when I was a small boy. So now you used to eat it, and now you can use it on the internet. How about that? And I now have time for very short couple of good Scandinavian jokes. This one's called Fingernails. One day, Lena confided to her friend Hilda that she had finally cured her nervous husband, Ole, of his habit of biting his fingernails. Good gracious, said Hilda. How did you ever do that? It was very simple, was Lena's reply. I just hid his false teeth. And the second one is called lumber. Norwegians always pick on the Swedes, so this is a Swede one to be picked on. Two Swedish men go into a lumber yard to buy some 2x4s. May I help you, said the salesman. How long do you want them? One Swede replied, oh, for a long time. We're building a house. And the next one is called neighbors. What is the difference between Swedes and Norwegians? The Swedes have nice neighbors. That one might take a second. Well, Peter did take a couple of my ideas about the October 7th, but I'll repeat them. We'll be beginning again at the same time of 1:45 on October 7th to welcome the founder of Turn Back Time Farm in Paxton. We'll go on a pro tour of the farm and see about the construction of yurts. I don't know if anyone's ever seen a yurt. I camped in one summer up in Maine. They're big tents, but they're on a kind of a permanent pedestal. So you have some of the amenities of you don't have in a tent. And I used to tent for about 15, 20 years. So we'll be going out there via the GoPro on October 7th at 1:45. And now I'd like to turn it over to Peter Thomas for the rest of our virtual meeting.
Thank you very much, Neil, and thanks again, Dan and Ryan. At this time, our formal presentation is concluded, and we'll now move to breakout rooms for optional social gatherings. If you'd like to join us, please remain on Zoom, and you'll receive a notification to accept the breakout room momentarily. The event will conclude in the breakout room at 3:30. Thanks all for coming. Have a great day.